We had a really boring front yard that we wanted to look like it does today, full of flowers and food and fruit and life everywhere. So we decided to turn it into one giant wicking bed. You know what I mean by a wicking bed? It's got a waterproof bottom to hold the water in so that you can really add a lot of water at one time and the whole bottom of the bed fills up. It's all just sand and gravel down there, but you can never drown the plants because it overflows. But the plants then have a constant long-term supply to water. You don't have to water very often at all. And the water will even soak up towards the plants by capillary action. So a wicking bed ends up usually looking something like these ones here, these pictures I pulled off the internet. And then in the end, they just look like a regular raised bed, but they have a superpower underneath. So back to our boring yard. We now direct all of the water that comes off the roof into the yard. So the water flows down off the roof into these storage tanks. There's different tanks at every downspout. Once the tanks are full, then they overflow through gravity. It all just runs itself. So how did we actually do this? Well, we covered the entire yard in cardboard. And you can see we added like leaves and grass clippings, sticks and stuff like that. Just covered it right over top, didn't have to pull the grass out. Put a little bit of soil over top so we could plant right into it. We dug trenches in the front yard, filled those trenches full of larger sticks, then smaller sticks, and covered it with cardboard as well. And built a boardwalk with scrap wood over top of that, and covered that in wood chips. All of a sudden, we had little wood chip pathways in a garden. This is what it looked like a couple of weeks after it was installed. And this is what it looked like a couple of months after it was installed. And this is what it looks like 11 years after it was installed. And it's taken no maintenance. We did the same thing with the backyard, the little conventional garden and lawn. We dug trenches where we wanted the pathways to be. And then we filled it full of sticks, built the boardwalk over top, covered it over top with wood chips. And this is what it looked like at the end of that first season. We had a wonderful harvest that year. Totally abundant. And this is how it looks now after 10 years, 11 years. Kind of like those raised beds, wicking beds that I showed you. You would never guess that it has that passive irrigation system built in underneath. And better yet, we inoculated the wood chips with an edible variety of mushrooms, King Stropharia mushrooms, so now it's actually a productive growing space as well. It produces food. And the raspberries and other plants sucker into there all the time, so it's actually a passive propagation space as well. It's like a little nursery bed as well as being a walking path. And here I dug into the pathways while digging up some stuff 10 years later. Still feel the logs and sticks down in there. And if we pull this back,
wow,
look at this beautiful soil, and there is still the boards from the scrap wood boardwalk that we made 10 years ago. And I can still push on it. It hasn't rotted out. That's unbelievable. But look at the soil that has been built. This is just like, wow. And yet, there is still a tunnel. There is still a hole underneath of here that is acting as a water reservoir and a passive irrigation mechanism throughout the trails of the whole yard. Which got me to thinking, why had the walkways not collapsed in the course of 10 years? And it made me think of these living bridges that are found in the cultures of India and Southeast Asia, where living tree roots are braided together to form the bridge itself, and these bridges will last for centuries. Perhaps that's what's happening in our yard. So if you want to get an idea of what the soil structure and biology is like inside those trails, here I just dug the shovel in, and this whole root ball came out. That is what the plants are thriving in. This is our biological sponge, our wicking bed, our full yard wicking bed. Just wow, wow, beautiful. So other than providing us access, passive irrigation, passive propagation, fertilization, What else are these pathways doing for us? What other problems are they solving? Well, as weather becomes more and more extreme in its fluctuations, we're tending to get extremely dry periods, followed by heavy, short rains. And as you can see in this video here, a lot of that water just ends up flowing down people's yards and then off into the street. And in a week's time, they're going to have to be watering their yard again. Whereas with our yard, all of that water stays. It doesn't create a demand on the sewer system. It all stays. We don't have to water it. The same thing with the snow melting in the springtime. We shovel the snow up onto the yard because then we can harvest that all. Even during the winter, we can be watering our garden for the rest of the year. And I really want to emphasize the enormous amount of water that comes down off of our roofs when it rains. At each of our 4 downspouts, we will get thousands of liters of water during a heavy rain event. And a rain barrel is 200 liters. So think about that. Thousands of liters of water will come down. Where are you going to direct and store all of that overflow? That's going to be key. That's where these trails come in. And better yet, many cities are now advocating for people to be diverting the water from their laundry machine, their taps, and their bathtub and shower all out into the landscape because it reduces demand on the sewer. This is called gray water harvesting. So the hundreds of liters of water that we are all using every day in our homes could all be diverted into our gardens and passively underneath the surface be watering it from the bottom up. How awesome would that be? This is currently illegal here in Winnipeg, but let's work to change that. And these are all the reasons that you should dig trenches in your front yard.